HRC paid speeches from TKRK at HillaryClinton.com to J. Palmieri at HillaryClinton.com, John.Podesta at gmail.com, Slatham at HillaryClinton.com, K-Shake at HillaryClinton.com, Kreenolds at HillaryClinton.com, B. Fallon at HillaryClinton.com. Date 2016 to 2001-25028. Subject: HRC paid speeches. Team. Attached are the flags from HRC's paid speeches we have from HIWA. I put some highlights below. There is a lot of policy positions that we should give an extra scrub with policy, in terms of what was open to the press and what was not. The Washington Examiner got a hold of one of the private speech contracts. Her speeches to universities were typically open press, so this is worth a read. http www.washingtonexaminer.com. Clinton's speeches are cozy for Wall Streeters but closed to journalists. Article /2,553,294 Section Author Dan Friedman. Clinton admits she is out of touch. Hillary Clinton: I'm kind of far removed from the struggles of the middle class because the life I've lived and the economic, fortunes that my husband and I now enjoy, and I am not taking a position on any policy, but I do think there is a growing sense of anxiety and even anger in the country over the feeling that the game is rigged, and I never had that feeling when I was growing up. Never. I mean, were there really rich people? Of course there were. My father loved to complain about big business and big government. But we had a solid middle-class upbringing. We had good public schools. We had accessible health care. We had our little, one-family house that, he saved up his money, didn't believe in mortgages, so I lived that. And now, obviously, I'm kind of far removed because the life I've lived and the economic, fortunes that my husband and I now enjoy, but I haven't forgotten it. Hillary Clinton remarks at Goldman BlackRock, February 4, 2014. Clinton says you need to have a private and public position on policy. Clinton: but if everybody's watching, all of the backroom discussions and the deals, then people get a little nervous, to say the least. So, you need both a public and a private position. Clinton: you just have to sort of figure out how to, getting back to that word, balance, how to balance the public and the private efforts that are necessary to be successful, politically. And that's not just a comment about today. That, I think, has probably been true for all of our history. And if you saw the Spielberg movie, Lincoln, and how he was maneuvering and working to get the 13th Amendment passed, and he called one of my favorite predecessors, Secretary Seward, who had been the governor and senator from New York, ran against Lincoln for president, and he told Seward, I need your help to get this done, and Seward called some of his lobbyist friends who knew how to make a deal, and they just kept going at it. I mean, politics is like sausage being made. It is unsavory, and it always has been that way, but we usually end up where we need to be. But if everybody's watching, all of the backroom discussions and the deals, then people get a little nervous, to say the least. So, you need both a public and a private position. And finally, I believe in evidence-based decision-making. I want to know what the facts are. I mean, it's like when you guys go into some kind of a deal, are you going to do that development or not? Are you going to do that renovation or not? You know, you look at the numbers. You try to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. Clinton speech for National Multi-Housing Council, April 24, 2013. Clinton talks about holding Wall Street accountable only for political reasons. Clinton said that the blame placed on the United States banking system for the crisis could have been avoided in terms of both misunderstanding and really politicizing what happened. That was one of the reasons that I started traveling in February of '09, so people could, literally yell at me for the United States and our banking system causing this everywhere. Now, that's an oversimplification, we know, but it was the conventional wisdom, and I think that there's a lot that could have been avoided in terms of both misunderstanding and really politicizing what happened with greater transparency, with greater openness on all sides. What happened? How did it happen? How do we prevent it from happening? You guys help us figure it out, and let's make sure that we do it right this time. And I think that everybody was desperately trying to fend off the worst effects institutionally, governmentally, and there just wasn't that opportunity to try to sort this out. And that came later. Goldman Sachs Ames Alternative Investment Symposium, October 24, 2013. Clinton. Even if it may not be 100% true, if the perception is that somehow the game is rigged, that should be a problem for all of us. Now, it's important to recognize the vital role that the financial markets play in our economy and that so many of you are contributing to function effectively. Those markets and the men and women who shape them have to command trust and confidence, because we all rely on the market's transparency and integrity. So even if it may not be 100% true, if the perception is that somehow the game is rigged, that should be a problem for all of us, and we have to be willing to make that absolutely clear. And if there are issues, if there's wrongdoing, people have to be held accountable, and we have to try to deter future bad behavior, because the public trust is at the core of both a free market economy and a democracy. Clinton remarks to Deutsche Bank, October 7, 2014. Clinton suggests Wall Street insiders are what is needed to fix Wall Street. Clinton said financial reform really has to come from the industry itself. Remember what Teddy Roosevelt did? Yes, he took on what he saw as the excesses in the economy, but he also stood against the excesses in politics. He didn't want to unleash a lot of nationalist, populistic reaction. He wanted to try to figure out how to get back into that balance that has served America so well over our entire nationhood. Today, there's more that can and should be done that really has to come from the industry itself, and how we can strengthen our economy, create more jobs at a time where that's increasingly challenging. To get back to Teddy Roosevelt's square deal, and I really believe that our country and all of you are up to that job. Clinton remarks to Deutsche Bank, October 7, 2014. Speaking about the importance of proper regulation, Clinton said the people that know the industry better than anybody are the people who work in the industry. I mean, it's still happening, as you know. People are looking back and trying to, get compensation for bad mortgages and all the rest of it in some of the agreements that are being reached. There's nothing magic about regulations. Too much is bad. Too little is bad. How do you get to the golden key? How do we figure out what works? And the people that know the industry better than anybody are the people who work in the industry. And I think there has to be a recognition that, there is so much at stake now. I mean, the business has changed so much and decisions are made so quickly, in nanoseconds basically. We spend trillions of dollars to travel around the world, but it's in everybody's interest that we have a better framework, and not just for the United States but for the entire world, in which to operate and trade. Goldman Sachs Ames Alternative Investment Symposium, October 24, 2013. Clinton admits needing Wall Street funding. Clinton said that because candidates needed money from Wall Street to run for office, people in New York needed to ask tough questions about the economy before handing over campaign contributions. Secondly, running for office in our country takes a lot of money, and candidates have to go out and raise it. New York is probably the leading site for contributions for fundraising for candidates on both sides of the aisle, and it's also our economic center, and there are a lot of people here who should ask some tough questions before handing over campaign contributions to people who were really playing chicken with our whole economy. Goldman Sachs Ames Alternative Investment Symposium, October 24, 2013. Clinton, it would be very difficult to run for president without raising a huge amount of money and without having other people supporting you because your opponent will have their supporters. So our system is, in many ways, more difficult, certainly far more expensive and much longer than a parliamentary system. And I really admire the people who subject themselves to it. Even when I, think they should not be elected president, I still think, well, good for you I guess. You're out there promoting democracy and those crazy ideas of yours. So I think that it's something I would like, obviously as somebody who has been through it. I would like it not to last as long because I think it's very distracting from what we should be doing every day in our public business. I would like it not to be so expensive. I have no idea how you do that. I mean, in my campaign, I lose track, but I think I raised $250 million or some such enormous amount. And in the last campaign President Obama raised $1.1 billion, and that was before the super PACs and all of this other money just rushing in. And it's so ridiculous that we have this kind of free-for-all with all of this financial interest at stake. But, the Supreme Court said that's basically what we're in for, so we're kind of in the Wild West. And, it would be very difficult to run for president without raising a huge amount of money and without having other people supporting you because your opponent will have their supporters. So I think as hard as it was when I ran, I think it's even harder now. Clinton speech for General Electric's Global Leadership Meeting, Boca Raton, FL, January 6, 2014. Clinton touts her relationship to Wall Street as a senator. Clinton, as senator, I represented and worked with so many on Wall Street and did all I could to make sure they continued to prosper but still called for closing carried interest loophole in remarks at Robbins, Geller, Rudman and out in San Diego. Hillary Clinton said, when I was a senator from New York, I represented and worked with so many talented principled people who made their living in finance, but even thought I represented them and did all I could to make sure they continued to prosper. I called for closing the carried interest loophole and addressing skyrocketing CEO pay. I also was calling in 2006-07 for doing something about the mortgage crisis, because I saw every day from Wall Street literally to main streets across New York how a well-functioning financial system is essential. So when I raised early warnings about subprime mortgages and called for regulating derivatives and over-complex financial products, I didn't get some big arguments, because people sort of said, no, that makes sense, but boy, have we had fights about it ever since. Hillary Clinton's remarks at Robbins Geller Rudman and out in San Diego, September 4, 2014. Clinton on Wall Street. I had great relations and worked so close together after 9/11 to rebuild downtown, and a lot of respect for the work you do and the people who do it. Now, without going over how we got to where we are right now, what would be your advice to the Wall Street community and the big banks as to the way forward with those two important decisions? Secretary Clinton: Well, I represented all of you for 8 years. I had great relations and worked so close together after 9/11 to rebuild downtown, and a lot of respect for the work you do and the people who do it. But I think that when we talk about the regulators and the politicians, the economic consequences of bad decisions back in 2008, were devastating, and they had repercussions throughout the world. Goldman Sachs Ames Alternative Investments Symposium, October 24, 2013. Clinton talks about the challenges running for office. Hillary Clinton said there was a bias against people who have led successful and/or complicated lives, citing the need to divvy up assets, positions, and stocks. Secretary Clinton: Yeah, well, you know what Bob Rubin said about that. He said, when he came to Washington, he had a fortune, and when he left Washington, he had a small, Mr. Blank fine. That's how you have a small fortune, is you go to Washington. Secretary Clinton: You go to Washington, right, but, part of the problem with the political situation, too, is that there is such a bias against people who have led successful and/or complicated lives. The divestment of assets, the stripping of all kinds of positions, the sale of stocks. It just becomes very onerous and unnecessary. Goldman Sachs Builders and Innovators Summit, October 29, 2013. Clinton suggests she is a moderate. Clinton said that both the Democratic and Republican parties should be moderate. Ursula Burns: Interesting. Democrats? Secretary Clinton: Oh, long, definitely. Ursula Burns: Republicans? Secretary Clinton: Unfortunately, at the time. Short. Ursula Burns: Okay, we'll go back to questions. Secretary Clinton: We need two parties. Ursula Burns: Yeah, we do need two parties. Secretary Clinton: Two sensible, moderate, pragmatic parties. Hillary Clinton Remarks at Xerox, March 18, 2014. Clinton: Simpson Bowles put forth the right framework. Namely, we have to restrain spending. We have to have